to Take the Helm podcast, where we will share stories, experiences, data, and best practices with industry leaders, friends, and dealers. From market conditions to insights, leadership development to tough conversations, take the helm. Welcome back to Take the Helm podcast. My name is Taylor and I'll be your host. I'm excited to welcome a longtime friend and colleague, Thomas Manning, as our guest today. Thomas is the VP of Star Performance Marketing, one of our industry's best digital marketing agencies serving Harley-Davidson, power sports, automotive, and marine dealers nationwide. Welcome, Thomas. We're excited to have you here.
Good morning, Taylor. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So, listeners, today we're going to define digital marketing. We're going to define the digital customer. We're going to share the difference between taking demand off the table and creating demand from people that are not currently shopping. We're going to define the cost per lead and today's market impact. And Thomas is going to share his top 5 digital marketing best practice and how you can get the biggest return on investment for your digital marketing efforts. So let's dig in. So Thomas, what is digital marketing and how is it different from traditional marketing?
Well, I think if we, in its purest sense, digital marketing just simply means that someone is engaging a product or a company is promoting a product through some type of digital channel. So what that means then is that someone is online. Digital marketing is very often called online marketing. Someone is online searching for, a price, a product, a place. They're asking a question, and then in response to the question they ask, there's a litany of information, obviously, in the digital space that answers those questions. Now, traditional media, conversely, is everything that happens offline. So when we think about traditional media, let's go back to the days of when I started in the industry back in the 80s. There was a big 3. There was broadcast TV, there was newspaper, and there was radio. Those continue to be probably the leading traditional media outlets, but obviously there's others. Billboards, there are people who, do direct mail. So those are some of the traditional outlets that a lot of companies still do. But because of media segmentation, we've seen a much smaller percentage of clients' efforts and advertising budgets be allocated to traditional sources.
So our dealers are evolving digitally through their marketing, and we want them to continue to carry that through their digital sales process.
And Taylor, I think when you look at, so if digital is online and traditional is offline, then I think you really need to then differentiate, because everyone then asks the question, well, what's in it for me? Well, what should I use? Well, I think when you consider traditional, let's start there first, because obviously that has the most tradition. Traditional media has, because you're casting such a big net, and think about the mediums, broadcast TV, depending on where you're located and the terrain around you, a broadcast signal can go as far as 100 miles. Same thing with a radio signal. But most of the clients, and you think about your own footprint, your own trade zone, most clients are 20, 30, 40 miles is where they do the majority of their business. So when you're using traditional media, obviously you cover that 20, 30, 40 miles, but then that additional 60 miles could be determined as waste, because when you're using those channels, you can't say, just give me 40 miles worth. It's all or nothing. So when you're looking at traditional media, most businesses use that as a branding tool, really high funnel. So if you're trying to introduce a new product, alleviate some misconception about a business, just brand, whether you may have a bad reputation or a good reputation, traditional media really gives you the opportunity of, again, casting a big net. Now, when you look at digital advertising, that means that someone on their own volition has decided that they want to buy what you sell, either from you or from someone who sells what you sell, a competitor. Now, through the digital space, it now allows us to do more targeting to the customer and specify things based on the customer's preference, their behavior, and how they shop. So, just in review, traditional media casts a big net is where you can really talk about the benefits of a product or service. Digital media focuses more on the customer as they enter into the buying cycle. So that would be what I would say are the characteristics of digital versus traditional and how you differentiate them.
That's great, Thomas. And I appreciate you starting off with that because that's going to really help set our listeners up for this conversation. So thank you for separating the two. So we know, Thomas, that 90% of customers shop online before ever entering a showroom. Can you define the digital customer for us?
Well, I think the digital customer just, again, by definition, is a customer who decides to use some digital channel to be able to gather information. And obviously, in today's world, most people think about a search engine, even more specifically about Google, since Google probably owns 90% of searches that happen in and around us. So, that digital customer is someone who is using that platform in order to gather information about an intended purchase. Now, what I would probably suggest to everyone when they're thinking about that digital customer is let's think about the digital journey. So at the top of the funnel, and I mentioned it earlier, is the awareness phase. That is before a customer decides that they want to buy what you sell. So then as a business, as an advertiser, what you're trying to do at that level is familiarize a potential customer with what you sell. No matter what vertical you're in as a retailer, there are people, a certain percentage of the population that buy what you sell. You're trying to rent space in their mind so that when they enter into the buying cycle, they know enough about you that they can give you trial. But let's just say, for instance, Taylor, you decide you want to buy something. You want to buy what I sell. In today's world, most people start their journey in the digital space. You pull out a cell phone, you jump on a tablet or a PC, and you type in a keyword. In response to that keyword, a lot of information shows up. Ads at the top of the page that dealers are, again, seeking to bid on certain keywords based on how a customer searches. Then you have your organic presence that follows that. Now, another thing that is really important, if you really think about why people advertise in the awareness stage, is so that they can create a relationship and circumvent people going through the search path so that then they could just type in your URL direct. So what I might suggest to dealers or retailers as you listen to this podcast is really get dialed in on what percentage of your traffic to your, especially to your website, comes from people typing in your URL, comes from people who are finding you organically, whether it's through an organic search or even through your social organic efforts. Now, it's going to vary based on the maturation of the business, based on where you're located, your competitive landscape. There's a lot of factors that are going to impact, but I suggest you figure out what percentage of your traffic is coming from those means. What I talk to my clients about at Star Performance Marketing is that our goal would be somewhere between 55 and 60% of all of our traffic should come in an organic fashion or someone typing in our name direct, which takes a little bit of the pressure off of your budgets for creating or flanking your organic efforts to be able to drive people to your website. So once again, awareness at the top of the funnel, then there's consideration when someone enters the funnel on their own volition. Then there's some level of intent to a purchase. Now, the funnel used to end at a purchase. But in today's world, we all know that a significant amount of our customers are repeat business or referrals. So once a person makes a purchase, it's incumbent upon us to figure out ways to get that person to come back and service with us, to make their next purchase and the subsequent purchase after that, but also to refer us to their friends. Now, think about that. And in today's world, there are channels, mostly email marketing type channels, that really are probably the most cost effective ways. Someone's purchased from you, you got their name, you got their address, you got their email address, you got their phone number. So think about the channels: email marketing, texting, even direct mail are probably the most direct paths to being able to engage, connect with the customer, so that then they can say, hear ye, hear ye. Here's that customer or business that I bought from, and here's why I believe you as my friend, I'm going to endorse for you to do the exact same thing. So that would, to me, would be the digital customer. They are looking for some sense of immediacy. They are very communicative. They're looking for information, but they're looking for snackable type content. Snackable content that they can make an immediate decision on.
That's great, Thomas. And thank you for helping explain that customer's emotional journey and that buying journey, starting with the awareness phase. And I think it's good for dealers to understand how the digital customer moves through that journey, perhaps at a quick pace, because we live in a world today where we as humans expect instant gratification. Netflix, Amazon, right? There are these services out there, and so we expect that, and it's important that that translates to our operation in managing that digital customer. So thanks,
Absolutely.
Thomas.
Nope.
So Thomas, tell us, what is the difference between taking demand off the table and creating demand from people who are not currently in the market shopping?
Okay, well, let's go back a couple steps first, because taking demand off the table, what is demand? So someone, again, back to when we were talking about the buying funnel, someone has decided on their own volition that they want to buy what you sell, either from you or from a competitor who offers that same product or service. So if that then is demand, how do you take demand off the table? If we believe, and I certainly do, and when I talk with my clients, I think we have proven to clients that a significant amount, if not all, people, especially when they're buying a big ticket item, start their journey again digitally. So they're going out, they're pulling out a device, they're typing in some search term or keyword to be able to gather information. Once that person decides that they're in market and they start the search, they're then labeled as an in-market shopper. Now, some of the media channels that we employ, obviously, as advertising tools, Google, Bing, Facebook, Instagram. Well, all of these companies probably know, because we know Big Brother's watching, they probably know our name, where we live, and a lot more information about us. Unfortunately, because of privacy laws, they won't share them. But again, Taylor, if you entered into the buying cycle, you started typing in keywords, they won't tell me that Taylor's searching. But for money, they will allow me to serve up an ad in front of Taylor based on her shopping behavior. So down to where she lives, what type of keywords she's searching for, that would identify potentially what product or service she's interested in. Then if through either Google's or Facebook's ad planner, you can go through and set layers of targeting so that we can narrow down to that person who is not only shopping, but shopping for what we sell and lives in the geography that is most important to us. So then that's demand. So what my recommendation is, if you truly believe that there's such a thing as a low funnel customer, figure out the people who are in market shopping for what you sell in your trade zone, and ratchet up the biggest share of voice that you possibly can. And what that means is that there is a certain percentage of the market shopping for what you sell at any given time. They're out, again, digitally looking for what you sell. You want to make sure when they type in keywords that, one is that you have a good organic presence. But I always refer to organic presence as a marathon. You really got to work on that with content and blogs and information so that Google will index you higher than people who offer what you sell in the marketplace. But to be able to flank your organic when potentially you don't have a good organic presence, there's where advertising comes into play. Because keep in mind, when someone searches, at the top of a search panel, you have the space for 4 ad slots before you ever get to your organic listings. So I might recommend to you have a robust share of voice in those ad slots. And I know everybody does, money doesn't grow on trees. And in the environment we're in right now, we really got to pay attention to what we spend our money on. I'm going to make a bold statement. If you can't afford anything else, have a robust share of voice for people who are in market shopping through whatever you do with search terms or AdWords, would be my recommendation to you. Now, if that's taking demand off the table, creating demand would be for people who are out of market. They haven't decided they want to buy what you sell at this moment, or perhaps they're near market. What I'm meaning by near market is there's something in their ownership experience. They potentially, if we're talking to in the vehicle space, maybe they've had their vehicle for 3 or 4 years. The technology has changed. The colors change. Maybe they think they got a big service coming up and they don't want to spend that money. In the automotive space, they got an expiring lease, and at the end of the lease, they got to make a purchase. So there's a lot of things in your ownership experience that bring you near market. You hadn't started searching yet, but at some point in the near future, you got to. Well, what I suggest is you figure out the people either in your DMS, your database, that fit certain characteristics. They're in equity. So maybe you can communicate to them that they can use the equity in their vehicle as a down payment so that maybe they don't have to take any money out of their pocket, or they use that equity to reduce the amount financed so that their monthly payment is lower. You got someone who potentially has a high interest rate. So since the last purchase that they made, maybe they've done a better job of managing their credit situation. Now they deserve a better interest rate. Talk to that customer. Now, maybe they haven't done a good job of managing their credit portfolio, but at least now, based on their last purchase and where they stand, that gives you someone to sit in front of and create options of how that person may be able to purchase a new vehicle, upgrade whether it's to new or used vehicle, and lower their payment or pay the same as what they're paying right now. Another thing is lost service. Someone who bought from you and who's never serviced, or who serviced from you maybe in the last 2 years, but not in the last 12 months. They've defected. That is a great avenue to identify someone, because it has always been my belief, if you want someone to service from you over a period of time, when they make their next purchase, the ability for you to be on their shopping list goes up exponentially. So creating demand, find customers based on their ownership status or experience that you can entice to perhaps be in market shoppers sooner than they want to be, based on a very specific offer, not casting a big net. You're in equity. You got a high interest rate. You're a lost service customer. You got an expiring lease. So use those types of tactics to lure people into the market sooner, i.e. creating demand.
I love that, Thomas. I love how we're having a very specific targeted pipeline to create the demand. And Thomas, we did with you just a couple weeks ago, we did one of our educational webinars where we were talking about generating demand in a tough market. And Thomas has just given some very simple yet clear direction on how dealers can create demand right now with the client base that they have with no additional marketing spend. And I think that's what's really cool about this specific topic here. So, Thomas, I appreciate you doing that. So, Thomas, let's talk about cost per lead. We are hearing this so much right now. Dealers are saying, I think the cost per lead is going up. Let's talk about what does the cost per lead mean. So let's start with what does it mean, and then what are you seeing in today's market?
Cost per lead. Um, Pretty simply, how much do you have to spend to move a vehicle over the curb? How, as far as advertising dollars are concerned. Now, before I get into what I'm seeing as a cost per lead in today's market, I think it's important to kind of walk you through this paradigm. Think about it. If you did not advertise at all, if you just had the sign on the building, an inventory either inside the building or sitting on your lot, there's a certain amount of sales that you're going to make in your marketplace, regardless of whether you advertise or not. Now, I know you're spending money on the building and the signage and the lights and all those, so there's some expense, but you don't have an expense line that says advertising. So, now, I don't suggest you test it out and find out how many vehicles you can sell without advertising, but I will tell you intuitively, you know that if you open up the doors and have that OPEN neon sign glowing on the front, you're going to sell something. So then the allocation per unit or the cost per sale is zero. So what really most clients don't understand is when you have a cost per lead, every customer you sell, you're not paying the same amount as a cost per lead to get that customer to purchase from you. A certain amount of them you're paying nothing. Then that next level of customers, depending on your competitive landscape, your image in the market, whether you have a great reputation or a bad reputation, whether you have you have a dealer point that is populated with competitors right around you or they're far away, whether you have a product that the OEM has done a good job of proliferating the brand and the features and benefits, or do you have to do it yourself as a dealer? So there's a lot of factors that play into what that cost per sale should be for those customers who are not going to just buy from you, whether you advertise or not. So you got to think about it. Could cost you in some cases thousands of dollars in advertising to get some of your sales in the door. So that's why when you think about cost per lead, you got to think about it as an average. There are people who would come in regardless, but then there's got to be some certain level of awareness that you exist for them to come in, even if you're not advertising. And then for those that are a jump ball, I can go north, south, east, or west, the same distance to your competitor that I can come to you. They sell the same thing you do, same product, same color, same service. Your reputations are similar. So from the customer, they don't understand DAT or trade zones or PMAs, whatever industry you're in, how your OEM draws out your trade zone. They don't understand that. All they know is you sell what I want to buy, but so does this person and so does this person. So now they got to go digitally and decide, is it in stock? Is it priced right? Are there incentives? And can I get it right now? So we all got to make sure that we understand the dichotomy of how a customer shops. But let's talk about cost per lead. What I'm seeing in today's world, and depending on where you live, in more rural areas where dealerships are farther apart or the population is not as dense, typically I see cost per lead somewhere between 300, 350. As you get into a more populated area, and typically where there's more population, there's more dealer points to service that population. Now your competitive landscape is more intensified. I see then cost per leads creep up to be more like $400 to $550 again, depending on all those factors I mentioned earlier. So you really got to determine how you got to approach the marketplace to have a big enough share of voice, and go back to that funnel. Go back to that buying funnel: awareness, consideration, intent to purchase. You not only do you have to reach people who are in market shoppers, you got to reach them with a level of frequency to be able to push them down the funnel because your competitors are doing the exact same thing. So you really got to have, again, I use that term, share of voice. You got to have a significant share of voice. So when you're trying to determine what your cost per lead should be, what should be ringing in your head is what type of share of voice do I need to have to get to my intended sales goals? So that then, Taylor, would be how I would sum up cost per lead.
Thanks, Thomas. And for our dealers listening, it doesn't matter if you're in automotive, power sports, Harley Davidson. If you need help identifying your cost per lead and you need help identifying what the right digital marketing package or plan is for you, Thomas and his team are here to help. We've actually worked with Thomas. I think is it 12 years, Thomas, that we've worked
12 years.
together in
Yep.
our dealerships. And I may be a little biased, y'all, but Thomas and his team are arguably the best digital marketing agency in our industry. So I highly recommend you reach out to him. I'll put his and his team's information in the details below. Reach out to them. Let them help you understand what is the cost per lead in your market and what do you need to do to maximize that. So let me get off the soapbox there for a minute. But Thomas,
Thank
we
you.
had to plug you. You're such
Thanks for the
a
kind words.
yes, you and your team are wonderful. So, Thomas, let's get into your top 5 digital marketing best practices. What should dealers focus on today?
Okay, let me just sum this up. And I know we talked about this earlier when we had our webinar, but there are 5 things. First and foremost, every dealer needs to really codify exactly where your trade zone is. Now, I know we all have dealer or OEM assigned trade zones, but find out where 80% of your new and used vehicle sales originate from, and that should be your footprint. That's one. Number 2 is inside of that geographical footprint, who has the highest propensity to buy what you sell?
Hmm.
And we all believe that, well, anybody, I'll sell to anybody. And quite frankly, you will. If they either got cash or can be financed or got a co-maker that can help them get financed, you ideally would sell to them. But success leaves a trail. Find out what that prototypical customer looks like, and then make sure that you craft all of your advertising, which is everything that goes outside of the building to pull people in, and your marketing, which are all the efforts that happen inside of the building to push the product out, are aligned with that prototypical customer. Don't cheat. Don't make it too big. You can't be everything to everybody. It costs too much money.
Mm.
Then, thirdly, you got your geo. You know who your prototypical customer is. You got them on the hook. You got to meet your channel. What do you say to them? What I suggest, especially in today's environment, is you have to have a message of attainability. Can they afford? And we all know we're in a monthly payment environment. And we always have been. But it's been magnified now with inflation and interest rates and now values of motorcycles. A lot of people are underwater, so they can't use their trade as a down payment. So it's really important that you as a dealer, no matter what vertical you're working in, help your customers understand how they can own what you sell and not just blow up their lifestyle at home. Because they got to pay energy bills. They got, to put their kids through college. They got commitments that, quite frankly, sometimes are more important than what you sell. So you got to be empathetic to that and understand and help them with attainability. So very specifically on attainability. Credit, no matter what their credit situation, good or bad. People with good credit looking for great interest rate. People with not so good credit are looking for someone that'll say, yes, you can get me approved. You want to make sure that, again, back to the payment. So if you're doing advertising and you're not focusing in some capacity on term or monthly payments, I might suggest that you visit that with your internal team. So if there's geography, prototypical customer, what are you going to say to them? Attainability was what I would suggest. Then it comes down to what media channels. offer you the most cost-effective way to get the biggest amount of reach for people who are in market with the greatest amount of frequency. Because just reaching them one time is not good enough. You got to push them down the funnel with frequency. So I would say when you're taking demand off the table, if you can't afford anything but taking demand off the table, have a robust advertising presence in search, which is typically Google AdWords search, display, which gives you the ability to retarget people who've been to your website, social media, which in today's world, there's a lot of channels, but still Facebook, Instagram lead. All of those channels give you the ability not only to retarget people who have been to your website, but they also let you expand your scope to people who are in-market shoppers. Remember, we talked about in-market shoppers who have not been to your website. You don't know the name, but by golly, Google and Facebook and those guys will let you put your ads in front of them. So take demand off the table first, then go and create demand. And the way to create demand, what I would suggest, streaming, whether it's OTT, CTV, streaming audio, programmatic display, email marketing. So whether it's your database email marketing, whether you're texting, whether you're using things like a personalized URL, which is a Pearl, a conquest email blast. So you can see that there's a litany of ways for you to communicate to customers in a cost-effective way, but you got to have a strategy. And then number 5, set up KPIs. What does success look like? You just can't put the blindfold on and throw darts. You got to have a plan. You got to work the plan. You got to go back and evaluate, did you get out of the plan what you anticipated? Look at your line items of things that you're investing in. Figure out what gives you the most juice and put more money there. So that would be the top 5 things that I might recommend to dealers, Taylor.
That's awesome, Thomas. And, just to quickly summarize, because Thomas brought it today. Thomas brought a lot of great things. We talked about, we defined digital marketing. We defined the digital customer. We talked about the difference between taking demand off the table and creating demand from the people not currently shopping. We defined the cost per lead and the impact today. And Thomas shared those top 5 digital marketing best practices and explained how to get the biggest ROI on your digital marketing. So Thomas, thank you so much for your time today. It's always a pleasure to learn from you. I feel like every time we get together, we're always learning something new. And I hope the dealers took a lot away from today. Dealers, audience, thank you for tuning in. To learn more about Star Performance Marketing and how Thomas and his team can help you maximize your digital marketing ROI, click the link below. Be sure to reach out to Thomas, introduce yourself. He'd love to get to know you and your team. To learn more about Lead Helm and how we can help your dealership drive more appointments that Thomas is helping drive, visit leadhelm.com or click the link below. And be sure to subscribe to our monthly podcast and tune into all of our conversations with industry leaders, friends, and dealers. And be sure to share this with someone in the industry. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us your biggest takeaway or drop your questions below. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.